Hey, thanks for watching this video about the best presentation APIs. Today, I'm going to walk through a bunch of different APIs that you can use to create presentations, embed them inside of your apps, and automate different types of presentation workflows. Maybe you want to automatically generate reports. Maybe you want to automatically create presentations for clients. Maybe you're making them for school. I'm going to walk through a few real-world prompt examples so you can see what it's like for each of these different APIs to go and generate actual slides that you might use for school or for work. The list of presentation APIs that we're going to check out today are Plus AI, SlideSpeak, PowerPoint Generator API, Presenton, SlidesGPT, and Gamma. We'll also take a quick look at the Google Slides API itself and a library called Python PPTX that you can use to create presentations as well. And we're going to go through all of these and you'll see what it's like to work with the APIs and the types of outputs that you would get from each of them. The first one we're going to start with is Plus AI. Plus AI is a tool for professional presentation makers to make presentations directly inside of PowerPoint and Google Slides. They recently released an API, so now you can do the same workflows that you would otherwise do in the app directly via an API. One of the nice things about Plus, they have a bunch of different templates you can use, or you can use your own templates, and we'll walk through what that looks like to get a few different types of presentations created inside of Plus. Okay, so here's how the presentation API works. Anyone who has a pro or a team plan instantly has access to the API, and you can create presentations with a HTTP request. All you have to do to get an API key is log into your account settings, click the Create Key button, and you'll be able to copy and paste it out of there. I think that's actually how all the tools on the list today will work. But essentially what happens is you send a post request to this API URL. You can provide a prompt. You must provide a prompt, and you can also include some other options like the number of slides, the language, what type of template you want to use, or just a description of the template you want to use. Plus AI will send you back a polling URL. You go and poll the polling URL, and once the presentation's ready, it will give you a link where you can go and download the PowerPoint file. So they provide a couple of different examples here. I'm just going to go through and have it run. Make a presentation with Plus AI using prompt number 1. So what I'm going to do over here is I have 3 different prompts to test out today. First is create a pitch deck for an AI company that helps teachers create custom lessons plans for students, make it look creative but professional. Prompt number 2 is create a case study on Spotify's entry into the podcast market and whether or not they could have better spent the capital on acquisitions on a different business line. Use a consulting style slide template. And then the last one is create a presentation about the different types of dinosaurs for a group of elementary school students. Keep it fun and playful. So what I'm doing now is we're going to start running the Plus AI API, and to walk you through what the code looks like, we're just telling it, here's the prompt, create a pitch deck for Educate. We're sending that prompt along and getting back a request ID and polling URL. After we get the polling URL, we're going to wait for a little bit, and then what will happen is we check the polling URL. Once it's ready, it'll give us a URL to download the presentation itself, and once we have that presentation, once we have that URL, we'll go and download the URL into our folder. Okay, run prompt 2. So we'll go and run each of the prompts for each of the different APIs, and then while they're running, we can also go and take a look at what was created. So here's that Educate pitch deck. So Educate custom AI lesson plans. I can flip through a couple of the things here and see there's a nice example of different types of highlights and icons like we asked for, a bunch of different slide layouts, and you can see the icons here actually make sense with what was being presented. There's also some charts that we created about the market opportunity, the business model, the team, and roadmap and next steps. Also in this slide deck, it looks like Plus included this last slide where we can go and like take some of these elements and use them on the slides if we want to go and customize stuff later. But anyway, it gives us a nice first pass at something that we'd be able to customize and turn into a pitch deck. Here's the overall slides again. Okay, let's have it run again for the Spotify example. And on this one, we actually asked it to make it look more like a consulting style presentation. So hopefully we'll have like, higher density content on the slides, more numbers, more charts, that kind of stuff. Okay, so now that Spotify example is done, come take a look at it over here. So here is the Spotify podcast market entry case study. You can see the layout here looks very different than the last one. Looks like something a consulting firm would put together. Gives us a nice overview of key acquisitions by Spotify, market performance metrics, capital allocation. Looks like podcast acquisitions made up 55% of Spotify's content acquisition spend. So just very different layouts and formats than the last one, but you can see quickly how it did a pretty nice job using a different template and having a different style of presentation come out. Even took some guesses on what the ROI on these different types of investments did. Okay, last one looks like we have the dinosaur presentation. And let's pull this one up. This is the one that's meant to be more for kids. And it used this nice spiral notebook or composition notebook style template, so you can quickly see the different things that it so you can quickly see how it can do different templates depending on what you ask for. One thing that didn't happen in this presentation is it didn't include any images, which would have been helpful for the dinosaurs. I think if I went back and asked it to include specific images, it probably would have done that, but it was probably more indexing on things that would be interesting for a kid. Okay, so that was all of the Plus AI examples. Now let's go through and see how this works for another tool. And next up we have SlideSpeak. So SlideSpeak is another presentation tool that helps people make presentations using AI. They also have their own presentation editor, which is a little bit different than working directly inside of PowerPoint or Google Slides, but it seems like they have a lot of similar features to what we just saw inside of Plus. In their API documentation, you can see a bunch of different things you can do with the API. You can generate a presentation, you can generate a presentation slide by slide, you can edit a slide, edit a presentation. But what we're going to do now is just go through and make a request to generate a presentation. Looks like this works pretty similarly to Plus, where we send a request, the presentation gets created, and then you poll to see where the presentation will be downloaded from. Okay, so now let's say run prompt 1 with SlideSpeak. And we'll do that same ask where we tell it to generate a pitch deck for Educate using the SlideSpeak API this time. And just to pull up what this looks like, very similar to Plus, we're going to generate a presentation, pass along a prompt, the number of slides we would want. It'll start generating the presentation, and from there we will go and check the task status, see when it's done. When it's done, we're going to take the request ID, pass it along, and then get a URL where we would be able to download it. And then we can download it directly to our computer. Okay, looks like that one just finished. Let's do prompt 2 as well. Educate pitch deck. So here's what the SlideSpeak generated deck looks like. Nice that they included an image here. Not sure if it's totally relevant, but definitely looks nice. Cool agenda slide. You can see they've done something similar where there's a bunch of icons, headers, and detail sections on the slide. A few different types of slide layouts, which are nice. And overall looks pretty good. I'd say the main difference is just the content doesn't necessarily fill up the slides sometimes. Although it is nice that it's not just the same layout every single time, and there are a bunch of different versions. It can be a good starting point to go and edit this deck later. Okay, let's generate the case study on Spotify's entry into the podcast market and see how that goes. I'll tee this up to be ready. Check out what this one looks like. Spotify case study. And here you can see it looks pretty similar to the last one, so there's not as much of a diversity in the number of templates that it'll go use for us. But you can see there's a bunch of different slide types that happen, so that is nice over here, how it doesn't look exactly the same as the previous presentation. I'd say the level of analysis looks like it's not as deep just because there's not as much content, but overall the slides look okay. And then last but not least, we'll do this third presentation about the different types of dinosaurs. All right, and here's the dinosaurs presentation. You can see the images here are relevant, so it is nice that it put in real images. They are a little bit cut off, so I'm not sure they're always going to work, but it's a nice start. And you can see here, seems like most of the template and layouts are going to be the same between each of these presentations, although they're not exactly the same. It's not like it was the same slide layout every single time, just a little bit less variety than the previous one. Okay, let's check out the next tool now, which is going to be... Next up is the very simply named PowerPoint Generator API.com. And this one's actually a little bit different. At first, I thought you would be able to just create a presentation here. But what actually happens here is that you have to give it a .pptx template file to begin with, and then a JSON file with all of the information that you want within your presentation. So like the other ones, you're generating a bunch of content with AI. The way that this one works is the content is actually you already have the content ready, and then you're asking it to go and fill it out. So to show you what the quick start looks like, there is data inside of a JSON object. So like the title of your presentation and then the subtitle, just different fields that you would have on top of your template. So the template slide looks like this. And then what happens here is basically the API will go and fill in the content. So let's ask, now do the PowerPoint Generator API with prompt 1. So what happens here is that you can't prompt this in the same way that you would prompt the other tools. So what'll have to happen is you create some sort of data.json file, and then have that get plugged into the template file that you already gave it. So here we're writing the content for the title slide. This API uses templates, so we just create a simple title slide, and the title will say educate, and the subtitle will say AI company that helps teachers create custom lesson plans. Let's go back and take a look at it. So that's it. It'll just go and say AI company that helps. If I wanted the full presentation to be generated, I'd actually have to go and create the template slide for all the different slides in the presentation, and then the JSON for what goes on to each slide as well. Okay, the next one we're going to be looking at is Presenton. I don't know exactly how to say it. This seems like a pretty interesting product as well. What their differentiator is that it's actually an open source product. So you can go look it up on GitHub and see all of the code. And you can use the API either through their cloud hosted model, or you can also use your own models and go in and fill stuff out. So here I will go and say, now create prompt 1 with Presenton. And maybe not super surprisingly, because this one has started out from the open source world, they have a lot of documentation about all the different things you can do with the API. So you can do stuff like generate the presentation synchronously, generate the presentation asynchronously, which is closer to what we've done for the other ones, where we send a request and then poll a URL to see when it's done. There's other functions where you can create a presentation from a JSON, subscribe to a webhook, get all the different template IDs that you might have, get all the presentations for a user, upload files, all this kind of stuff. But basically, this one is more of like a developer-focused tool where they want to have an open source product out there, and then there's also an API so you can try it out if you want to. The API here is also nice. It gives you a little bit of update on what's happening behind the scenes as the presentation is getting generated. So it'll generate the outline, select layouts, make the slides, and export it to PowerPoint. Let me get this set up so we can make the next one too. I'm also going to go back and Okay, so the Presenton one is here. And generally it looks pretty good. I like the different like design elements. The images look okay. The layout, when you take a closer look at it, seems kind of repetitive. So on a lot of these slides, we're seeing the same kind of motif of let's do 3 headers plus 3 detail sections, 3 headers plus 3 detail sections, and maybe an icon or something, or maybe an accent image. It looks okay. If I was using it for real life, I'm not sure if the slides really meet like a typical presentation template enough for me to be able to go and build off of it. Overall, if you need something quick, it looks pretty good. It's also open source, so if you wanted to, you could probably go extend different pieces of it. I also like that it can make, I thought this would be a table, but actually it looks like it's just a bunch of shapes put together over here. Okay, let's have it do the consulting style presentation now, Spotify case study. Cool, that one is done. Let's go check that out. Spotify Presenton deck. And cool to see these images come in. But one thing I noticed again is that it looks very, very similar to the last presentation, especially in terms of like the, let's have 3 headers and 3 detail sections on each slide. It is nice to see a graph, although it seems like this graph is actually just an image. So if I want to change it, it's probably not too easy to actually go edit it. Also not sure where the data comes from. Doesn't seem like it really matches other stuff on this slide. Overall, I'd say this is probably not super usable as a consulting style presentation. Versus like the pitch deck like we saw earlier. But it is nice. It's all, you know, native PowerPoint. There's icon images. So it could be a good starting point if I just need like one slide for something. But it is going to be a little bit tough to take this format and try to make a full presentation out of it. Okay, the last one we're doing is the presentation for kids about the different types of dinosaurs. Let's see how that one comes out. Oh, it also looks like on the payload for these presentations, you can set the type of tone and template that you would want to use. So that's kind of interesting. I don't think all of the other tools have that same level of configurability, even the ability to choose the type of image that you want. Oh, cool. So we can see that over here in the API docs as well. You can set what type of tone you want, whether to use stock images or AI generated image, whether you want to use web search or not, the number of slides. So it seems like there's a couple more options in this one than the others, which is nice. Okay, and dinosaurs, Presenton deck. Yeah, it seems like it's basically always the same format for the title slides. And then the first few slides really always follow this same layout or slide type where there's 3 headers and then 3 types of detailed text underneath it. These images came out okay. Like I'm not sure why there's the red panda picture, but then the T-Rex picture looks nice. The toy dinosaurs are okay. Could just be these are the images that came through the web search, but we can also go and change that in the API to request AI-generated images instead. Also looks like it repeated the same dinosaur image like 4 times in the presentation, but hopefully there's some settings that I can do to actually go and change that. Okay, the next one we're going to take a look at is SlidesGPT. And this one looks like it operates pretty similarly to all the other ones that we'd seen. You send a request, and then it gives you a response with a link to a download for the PowerPoint file. So let's do make the deck for prompt 1 with SlidesGPT. And let's take a look at the code here. So we're going to generate the presentation. It'll return a presentation ID and a download URL. We'll start generating it. And then looks like to download it. We just take the presentation ID that we were given earlier and figure out what the URL will be to download. We'll ping that, we'll just go try to get that URL and then see what comes back. So it looks like the way that the SlidesGPT API works is that instead of sending an initial request and then getting a polling URL where we go and check to see if the presentation is ready, it just responds directly with the download link for the presentation, and then we can go and download it directly. Deck came back. Let's go and take a look at it. Educate SlidesGPT. So here's the presentation, agenda, introduction, problem, solution, how it works, benefits. Overall, it looks like the content is okay. The main thing that seems like we'd be missing here is that because the layouts look so similar between all the different slides, it feels like it's pretty repetitive to have like the 4 icons and a block of text underneath everything. Overall, it's a nice start, and it does look like this is formatted like a typical PowerPoint deck where you have a title and a subtitle and then some content. So probably an easier one to go and start editing and making changes on top of versus some of the other ones that we saw earlier. Let's see how it does with the consulting style presentation where it does a case study about Shopify. Cool, looks like the Spotify one is now downloaded as well. Let's take a look at that. Spotify SlidesGPT deck. And overall, this looks pretty similar to the last one. It seems like we have the same layouts happening over and over again. Sometimes images coming in as well, which is nice. I think generally reading through, I like the quality of the content that it's generating and the types of bullet points that it actually makes. The main issue is just that it doesn't seem like there's enough different slide types and layouts in the presentation overall. So I would want to have just more variety in order to make this look like a real presentation. It does seem like it's very editable, and I can go and start using this as like a starting point for making a deck, but it's probably not going to be as ready as some of the other tools that we saw. Okay, last one we were going to do is the presentation about the different types of dinosaurs for elementary school students. I'm guessing, given what we've seen with these first two, that it's probably going to follow the same layout. So then for this type of presentation that we're expecting to be like a little bit more playful, if it's made for elementary school students, probably not going to happen too much here, but let's take a look and see what happens. Okay, looks like the dinosaur deck is ready. And yep, looks pretty much like the other ones that we just saw. Here the icons also don't make a ton of sense, and the images probably aren't as good as we would like. Maybe a good starting point for any presentation would just like to see like a little bit more sophistication in the slide types if we're going to use this for a production style presentation. Okay, next up we've got Gamma. And Gamma recently came out with this Generate API. They make generally really nice presentations. You can see here the colors generally look pretty good, and you can do some stuff around customizing the look and feel. On exporting presentations, the big question with Gamma is whether or not you're exporting as a PowerPoint or you're exporting as a Gamma. And what I've seen from testing this out a little bit so far is that if you wanted to use Gamma to make a Gamma presentation inside of Gamma, it looks pretty good. The problem is if you're trying to make a Gamma style presentation inside of PowerPoint, it seems like a lot of the formatting and design things end up breaking. So I'll show you what it looks like. Here's how the API works first. Very similar to the other ones, you give it the input text. You can set some parameters around what type of theme you want, any additional instructions on top of the input text, how much text you'd want, what the audience would be, where you want images to come from. A lot of good parameters that you can set here. And then once you're done, you can get a URL where it'll show you like, here's the generation. And it'll tell you the status of the generation. Once it's complete, it'll give you the URL to the Gamma and tell you how many credits you have left. So here's how it runs over here. Generate a presentation, get a generation ID to track the progress. We'll go pull the URL to see the status of that generation ID, and then once it's ready, download the exported file, either as a PDF or a PPT. Looks like it just finished prompt 1. And I will pull that up now. So here's that Educate Gamma deck. And what you'll see here is generally looks pretty good. However, there are some things where the formatting just seems a little bit weird. I'm not sure what these are supposed to be. And sometimes it seems like stuff gets pushed off of the slide a little bit, and the like this doesn't really fill out the top of the slide like you would expect it would be. However, if I go and actually look at the Gamma URL, what we'll see is the formatting is actually a lot prettier because it's formatted to just be a part of like the Gamma solution. So the height of this card is actually not the height of a typical slide. So on the slide, it just puts it in the middle. Whereas you can see over here, it looks like it's more top aligned and bottom aligned. Over here, they just put it in the middle of the slide. On this market opportunity, it looks over here like it was just squished into the middle, and it's because it was. Over here, it's like kind of a less tall card. Overall, this is probably a decent starting point for some types of presentations, but you can kind of see it was probably meant to be displayed more in this type of like flowing format where there's not a fixed height and width on top of all of the presentations. Okay, now let's try with that Spotify case study and we'll see how that one turns out. First, we'll take a look at the First, we'll take a look at how the PowerPoint came out, and then again, we'll go and take a look at how the Gamma itself did. So here, I'd say looks generally okay, maybe a little bit plain. And then you can see, you know, here's the things where things will sometimes like overflow across the slide and not be really aligned properly. This looks nice. I like how these images just work and I can edit them, although it might be tough to change this from, you know, 68 to 75 and have this bar chart update. Here's another chart that kind of overflowed the slide. Overall, I think it looks okay, but the main issue here is because this isn't formatted like a typical PowerPoint deck, it's probably going to be hard for me to go and actually make changes to it later. If I were editing it directly inside of Gamma, it's probably easier. And let's go see what that looked like over here. Over here, you can see like the height of the boxes are probably different than what we would expect in a typical presentation, and maybe that's why it looks a little bit different. Overall, I would have expected more theming to be happening just with the prompt itself, but it looks like in order to make these like all look quite different, I'd probably have to go through and try more of the API parameters around a specific theme to use and additional instructions and image options. Overall, it looks quite good, but would want to see a little bit more compatibility with PowerPoint and how I can actually edit the presentation afterwards if I was trying to make PowerPoint decks. Okay, and then looks like the last Gamma slide deck is done here as well for dinosaurs. And on this one, it's nice. It looks like it actually generated the images to be a bit cartoony. Not sure what happened here with the text, but overall you can see this being like a pretty friendly presentation for kids. I can probably go and try a different image model if I wanted to, but here's another example of something where the layout just doesn't look quite right. I'd probably have to do a bunch of work across the deck to make sure that all of the titles are formatted the same way and all the layouts look the same. Overall, pretty cute. I like the different layouts that we had in here. Whoa, not sure what happened to the text. Maybe it's missing a font or something like that, but it looks a little bit funky. This one looks great. Overall, I think this will, again, look better inside of Gamma itself. But when I export it to PowerPoint, that's where there can be a bunch of issues with what happens when it's an actual slide format. Cool. And you can see all of the text issues are totally gone in this version. Also, you don't have to worry about the layout issues. It generally just looks pretty good. It's when this is converted into PowerPoint where there can sometimes be some issues. Okay, so that's most of the presentation APIs that I wanted to go through today. There's two extra ones that I thought were worth mentioning, and those are actually the Google Slides API and Python PPTX. These are other ways that you can programmatically generate slides, but they're a lot more complicated than just using the APIs that I showed you earlier. I think a lot of the APIs might actually use these types of tools to create presentations. But essentially, if I want to use the Google Slides API, there's documentation through Google. It seems like it's relatively straightforward. You know, you can create a presentation, you can get the latest version of a page in a presentation. But what I'm going to have to do if I go through Google is I have to edit every slide at a much more granular level. So for any individual page, I would have to go and figure out, like, you know, what are the images on this page, and what is its position on the page. Like if I want to write text on the page, I have to go and edit like every single individual element to go and create the slide. Definitely possible, just a lot more work to get to the point where you have a presentation. And the other thing that's a lot trickier is, rather than just getting an API key and starting to work on it, you would have to go and create a new Google Cloud project in order to get started. You'd have to do set up Google Auth so that you can access a Google Drive and create the presentations inside. Just a lot more work to get started with something, and there's not AI generation for content built in. It would be more like the PowerPoint generator API that I showed you earlier, where we're filling in every single piece of content by hand, and we'd have to go and create every individual piece of content as well. So that's definitely possible. You can use the Google Slides API to create slides, and with AI, you can probably get something done pretty quickly. Just a lot more work than the other APIs that I showed you in this video. The other thing that you can use is Python PPTX. So this is a Python library where you can create, read, and update PowerPoint slides using a library that will go and actually write the PowerPoint files themselves. If you ever try making a presentation inside of ChatGPT, inside of Claude, and it creates an artifact, you read all the thinking tokens, that's typically, that's actually, they're going to be using Python PPTX or a similar library to create those slides. Writing a program to create PowerPoint slides using Python PPTX by hand is going to take a while. You're going to have to do the same stuff that you would do with the Google Slides API, where you create one slide at a time, add individual elements to the slide, one piece at a time. Using AI, you can probably get something quick set up relatively quickly. So over here, we have an example of, I just asked the AI to go and set up a script to go and generate presentations using AI. It went and created, different types of slides, a 2-column slide, a slide with a title and bullet points. So there's a title slide. You'd have to define each of these types of slides in the code. But then once you're ready, you can say, create prompt 1 using Python PPTX. And the cool thing about this is it's a library. You can run it, host it wherever you want. You don't have to make an API call out to someone, and it'll go and generate the slides for you. If you're already using other AI tools to generate the content, this would be the thing that you do to turn that content into .pptx files. It's probably not going to do as much of the work as one of the APIs would for you, but it's a nice start, and you can quickly see what it would be like to programmatically generate PowerPoint files. Okay, so over here, I'll pull up that Python deck, and you can see they're just very basic slides. Some of them have, this is a title slide, some of them have a title and some bullet points. Others have a title and a couple of other sections on the slide. One thing that's nice about this is it's a library, you're running it locally, so you can make any edits to it however you'd like. You can customize it, make sure it works for you, or if it doesn't work for you, you can try to update it. But that's another alternative to using some of these presentation APIs. Okay, great. That's the overview of all the different presentation API tools that are out there on the market right now. There's pretty broad range in the types of decks that you're going to get out of them. So going back to pull up a couple of examples, here's what it looks like inside of Plus AI to generate each of those presentations that we saw earlier. On the first one, which was the pitch deck, we have this nice sketchy format with graphs and different layouts, timelines, team slides, with a bunch of different layouts and slide types that kind of make this feel like a normal deck that someone would have created. The other thing that's nice is because these are laid out like normal slides, it would be a lot easier to go and edit them afterwards and adapt them however I'd like. The dinosaur deck is more playful and looks like a kid would make it. The Spotify deck looks like a consultant would have made it and follows a different type of layout. So it's nice that you can kind of prompt the system and it'll come back with the type of slides that you're looking for. Going to the next tool, which was SlideSpeak, the presentations here came out quite well too. The main difference was that there weren't as many types of different slide layouts, and then for any given slide layout, the design and how the content went and filled out the page might not look quite as good. But overall, these still look like normal PowerPoint slides. They have a title and it's easy to edit the title, move stuff around. So it'll give you a good start on creating something new. When you're looking at the Spotify versus the dinosaur presentation, one thing that's a little bit of a drawback here is that the template looks exactly the same across different types of presentations. So something for a kindergartner is going to be the same as something for a consultant presenting to a client. Depending on your use case, that might matter or might not matter, but just wanted to call that out. PowerPoint Generator API, this is probably one of the more limited tools. Here, it's like if you have a layout and you just want to fill in the content on the layout, you can use this tool. It'll automatically fill in a slide using the JSON if the slide is already created. If you're trying to create new presentations from scratch, it's probably not going to be a good tool for you. Presenton was another interesting one. So here we can see that the different types of presentations that it made all looked quite similar. Depending on what you're using these presentations for, maybe that's okay, maybe it's not okay. If you're just going for one slide at a time, you want something simple, this could be a good starting point. One of the cool things about this tool was it was open source, so you can also go and look at the code and make any changes that you want to how it would run on your local machine. Next was SlidesGPT, and over here there's some interesting learnings, which is the content here is quite good, but when you use the same layout over and over again and you use the same like template over and over again, it can look quite repetitive. So I'd say this one generally looks a bit more AI generated than the other API tools that were in this presentation. The content itself, like any given sentence, seems pretty good, except when you use the same format every single time, it looks very repetitive. And then last but not least, we had Gamma. On these Gamma presentations, they generally looked quite okay, except for when there were layout issues or export issues. When we pulled these up inside of Gamma, they looked great. Inside of PowerPoint, things can look weird. There's things that'll overflow the slide. Sometimes the font doesn't look like it fills the slide like it should. It is nice to have all the different options for how to generate images and icons and stuff like that. It just seems like this wasn't meant to actually output PowerPoint. If you look at it on the website, they look great. If you look at it in PowerPoint, they don't work super well. So depending on what you're looking for, that could be a great solution. If you're looking for PowerPoint, I would probably look elsewhere. If you're happy sharing a Gamma link and editing the slides in Gamma afterwards, then that works really well. Last but not least, we had the Google Slides API and we had the Python PPTX library. Google Slides API It's just a lot of work to set up. If you need that level of control, that's great. The alternative to that would be Python PPTX. You don't need to do all the setup of like the Google Cloud project and learning the intricacies of how Google Auth works and how you could create a new file inside of Google Drive. Python PPTX gives you the similar level of control when you're making PowerPoint slides, except it all runs locally because you can just use the library. That's the summary of the presentation API tools. If I were to rank them, I would probably put Plus AI at the top, depending on your use cases. If there's a great template inside of Plus AI, it can look really, really good right from the beginning. For certain types of slides, SlideSpeak looks really nice, and you will be able to use their API to create presentations as well. Gamma is a great option if you're happy to use the Gamma presentation URLs themselves. If you need to use PowerPoint, that probably doesn't work super well. And then SlidesGPT and Presenton are okay options if you want to have simple slides created, and then PowerPoint Generator API. This is probably if you have like very, very templated and scripted stuff and you want to invest the time to go and create the templates. I would either use PowerPoint Generator API or Python PPTX to do those types of workflows. Thanks again for watching the video. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments, and we'll be back with more videos soon. Thanks.